Well, good morning. Happy Veterans Day. I am not a vet myself, but I do have family members that are veterans. My dad, my grandfather on my dad's side, my dad's brother, cousin, and another uncle that were veterans. I personally wanted to join the military. The story surrounding that is a little crazy. I will share that with you to start this session this morning, this episode. I struggled in school. I wasn't very good at school. In high school, I was way behind, 2 years at least. I wasn't going to graduate on time. I struggled. I hated being at school. I hated being a part of it. Did not want to be there. I cut school a lot, virtually from my sophomore year to the end of my senior year. I was cutting school nearly every day. Basically the subjects I didn't want to be around. English, math, things like that. We had Sun Valley Mall down the street. I wouldn't take that direct route. I would go through Diablo Valley College, maybe get some lunch there. Or there was a donut shop on the other side of Diablo Valley College, across from College Park. There's a donut shop, and down that same corridor where the donut shop was, there was military recruiting stations for Navy, Army, Marines. And I walked by there on a daily basis. I got to know a lot of the recruiters that were in there, most of them anyways. Particularly the Navy recruiter. My dad was in the Navy, USS Kitty Hawk, 2 tours, 4.5, almost 5 years on the Kitty Hawk during the Vietnam War. I think he was an engineer or something like that, worked down in I forget exactly what he did. But so I particularly wanted to get into the Navy. But knowing that I wasn't going to graduate on time, I wanted to just get out and get away from everything. So I thought military would be the best thing for me, discipline, all that kind of good stuff. But throughout my life, my dad was not very supportive of the things and decisions that I made. For instance, when I was in soccer from 2nd grade through 8th grade, my dad didn't go to one game. And there would be around 20 games during the season. And during the winter, fall and winter, my dad didn't go to one game. I wanted to play other sports, but my dad wasn't supportive of that. I wanted to play Pop Warner football, Little League baseball, all that stuff. My dad just had no interest and didn't want to support anything that I wanted to do. So when it came to wanting to go into the military, I thought my dad would actually be supportive. So I was my senior year. It was towards the end of my senior year. I probably had a couple of months left. I was already in May, I was already 18. No, I was 19 years old. My senior year, May of that year, I was 19. So I'd been talking to this recruiter for a few months. He was getting to know me. We'd have lunch, things like that. He would even see me in the mall. He knew I would be going there, so he would just show up, be like, "Hey, how you doing?" He was very persistent, but he was a really cool dude. So by the time the end of my senior year, I think it was even before I turned 19, actually entered the recruiting office and went over all the information. Told him I wasn't going to graduate. He told me that you could get your GED by the time you finish basic training. That was the plan. And I was like, man, that's awesome. I need to get out because I wanted to get out of Dodge. I hated my family life. I hated school. I hated all of that. I wanted to leave. And why not be on a ship far away from everything? So I filled out all the paperwork, which included my address and everything. And he told me that I could take the paperwork home and have my dad. Well, I don't know. No, it did not need my parents' signature. That's right. It did not need my parents' signature because I was already 18. So, but I didn't sign the paperwork. I did not sign it. I was like, well, let me go talk to my dad first and see if he's okay with this. And he was just like, okay. And so I didn't sign the paperwork. I avoided the recruiter for a few days. And then one day, I think it might have been a Thursday or Friday evening, I was eating dinner with my family, and there was a knock at the door. My dad, being irritated, he got up and answered the door because he hated being interrupted at dinner time. He thought it might be one of my friends or something. So my dad gets up, answers the door. He comes back with an angry look on his face. He's like, hey, Mike, why is there a Navy recruiter at the front door? I go to the front door. He's in full dress, just full everything, looking sharp. And he says, hey, Mike, I just need your signature. And I looked back at my dad. I said, what do you think? And he was just like starting to like really just lay into me. You're not even graduating high school. You're failed at everything. What makes you think you're going to do something in the Navy? I mean, just really belittling. And I was like, Dad, I can get my GED within basic training. And he had plans for me. The Navy I was looking to go all in, maybe career, play football, which was part of the plan, maybe even basketball, all of that, and go even deeper in that career. That was my plan. I wanted it really bad. But because my dad wasn't very supportive of that or supportive at all, my dad went back in and sat down, and I closed the door and talked to him on the porch for a couple of minutes. And he was literally wanting to ship me out that night. I would have been shipped out. I think it was down in San Diego to the naval base to start all I had to do was sign the signature, not even pack anything, just get in his car and go. But because of my dad's just not wanting to support me, I decided not to. I turned him down. And I hated that decision for a long time. So I go back in and sit down and eat dinner. My dad's just dead quiet. He just looked at me and just was fuming, right? Fast forward, didn't graduate high school, all of that. I almost went back there a year later. I was 20 at this time. That my recruiter the guy that was recruiting me there had moved on to another position. And then the Marines recruiter was very persistent. He remembered me and he wanted me to join. And I was like this close. I wanted to get in the Marines too, but I just didn't want to because I just felt my dad wasn't going to support me. Anyways, there's that story. We reconciled some years later, my dad and I. So let's talk about my grandfather. This story is one of my favorite. My dad's dad, His name was Louis Starr. Born and raised, I think, in Seattle, lived there majority of his life. Went into, I think it was Marines or Army. He island hopped in World War II. So he was a part of those missions. They island hopped all over the place. And one of those islands in particular, they were on their assault. And if you've seen any of those movies and heard any of those stories, the history of that assault and the Japanese defense, it was tough trying to push forward because they're dug in, and a lot of times in the open areas, there's no brush, there's no trees, none of that. All that's just gone. All there is craters from bombs, literally just craters in the ground, in the sides of these mountains on these islands. And so my grandfather got separated from his men and was in one of those craters for, I think, a few days. He was pinned down. He was literally pinned down. And of course, at night, there is the danger of the Japanese soldiers coming through there with bayonets, literally, and would turn into hand-to-hand combat. So it's pretty intense. My grandfather is in one of these foxholes. I'm not sure exactly how long, it might have been a couple of nights. And he hears something off in the distance, someone running towards him. And before he can even look out of that big foxhole crater, someone jumps into his hole, his crater, and it was another soldier. And this guy was scared, out of his, and he was younger too. He was younger than my grandfather. And so the beautiful thing about this story is my grandfather, Louis, he was a Christian, and literally got this person, his name was Homer, got him calmed down and talked to him for a while, and then shared the gospel with him in this foxhole. Literally shared the gospel with him in this foxhole. And literally this guy, Homer, accepted the Lord as his personal savior right there in that foxhole. And for the remainder of that war, they were inseparable. They became best of friends. And fast forward, it's the end of the war. They're on the ship, and the war is over, and they're returning home. And waiting for my grandfather was my grandmother, holding my dad in her arms, and my grandmother's sister was there. And I forget her name. And so Homer, best friends of my grandfather, saw my grandmother's sister, immediately fell in love. Baby boomer time, right? Fell in love, and they soon got married. And so, hence me being related, he became an Uncle Homer. And then shortly, soon, once I think they had kids, which one of them was my cousin, Bruce, he ended up being best friends. They were inseparable. My dad and Bruce were very close. And so they were raised together. Uncle Homer Quarles was his name. He became a missionary in Brazil. And so he spent, I think, 20 plus years or more, 25 to 30 years as a missionary in Brazil. I didn't see Homer that much, maybe just a few times in my life growing up when we went up to Seattle for, family time, Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. And so we'd have these big family gatherings where everybody would be there, the whole family, cousins and stuff. And I only saw Homer a few times, and he was the life of the party. He was loud. He laughed a lot, just full of energy, this big belly laugh, and Bruce also became a missionary in Brazil as well. And so I rarely saw Bruce, only when Bruce would be home on furlough. I might have seen him 4 or 5 times in my life. Awesome dude. Just full of adventure. Survived in the jungles of Brazil as a missionary. So that story, really cool. One of my favorite stories, how that happened and how God, brought that all together. And then my dad's brother, Sid, he was stationed in Hawaii, and he was there during the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He witnessed the whole thing, survived that, of course. What's really cool is one of my best friends, this guy named Trevor, his grandfather was also in Pearl Harbor during that attack. And if you've seen any of the movies or seen any footage of that attack, and you remember a scene, I think it's in Pearl Harbor, maybe in a couple other movies, one other movie, there's a guy or a few men on the docks in Pearl Harbor, on the docks, when all hell's breaking loose, and they're there on the docks shooting at the Zeros with a big old machine gun. Well, my friend's grandfather was right there, right in the middle of it, with his shirt off and firing a machine gun at these Zeros. And Sid also had some crazy stories about that. Didn't talk about it a whole lot, but some of the stories that he did share was, firing a gun, being at a spot, sometimes having to dive for cover and all that, being shot at by these planes, and crazy stuff. But heroes of mine, right? Really, really cool stuff. Oh, hi. I got a friend watching. Nice to see you. So pretty incredible stuff. And the beautiful thing about Uncle Sid, and my grandfather, they still had those haircuts from that era, right? Hair slicked back and tight and military cut all the time, cleanly shaven all the time. And my Uncle Sid married a Hawaiian woman. Her name was Cece. They fell in love on that island, and they had a place up on Lake Washington. Really beautiful home, just a big spread with a lot of acres, and a beach area on Lake Washington. I think it was Lake Washington. Yeah. And I had a cousin, like their son was really cool. He had an awesome like jet ski boat that he would take us out on the boat. It was like super fast. It was purple. Very adventurous. His name is Jim. And pretty awesome family. Great cookouts. There was one barbecue that we had a luau basically, and Uncle Sid is wearing an original like grass skirt that he brought home from Hawaii. He went and visited there quite a few times after. I'd always wondered, I wanted to meet Cece's family in Hawaii. I guess it was a really big family in Hawaii. It would be kind of cool to try to check out and see if I can still see if there's any of them that are still alive or whatever. But I'd always wanted to visit them, always bragging about that. I got family in Hawaii. At least I thought it was worthy of bragging about, right? So, there's a couple other stories I have too. When I was in high school, my freshman year, my English class, he didn't come right away. It was like the second or the third day of class. There was a kid that came in, always had his headphones on, had a army green jacket on, or jacket. And he sat down next to me in the corner on the right side, in the back, where it didn't talk very much at first. But I ended up getting to know him pretty well. Most of the time he was pretty quiet. But there was a day I was really concerned for him because he sat there and his eyes kind of glazed over and his eyes started twitching and he was like sitting back and looking at the ceiling and he was just like, his eyes were just fluttering. And I tried shaking him a little bit, I was just like, I almost got the teacher, and he snapped out of it. And I asked him if he was okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm like, dude, what's going on with you? He's like, well, my dad was in Vietnam and I live with him and it's hell. It's living hell. I love him, but it's hell. And he says that what he was experiencing in the back of the classroom was an acid flashback. His dad had given him acid when he was a kid, probably like 4 or 5 years old, and gave it to him several times. But yeah, gave him acid, the drug acid, as a kid. And his dad was pretty crazy. Did 2 tours in Vietnam, survived that, but was recluse and had a lot of guns in the house and all this kind of stuff. And so it caused him to have some acid flashbacks and just at any time. But it was crazy because he was only there a short time, maybe 6 or 8 months, I think. And one day he wasn't at school and I never saw him again. And the only time we ever really talked was when he was in class with me. He got me interested in Pink Floyd, which was really cool. That's like one of my favorite bands. And so he'd be listening to Dark Side of the Moon like virtually every day. That was like the only tape that he listened to in his Walkman. But it was a trip. Some of my other friends had dads that were in Vietnam, but you never saw them. They were always in their room. They would work, but they'd go out in the early morning and leave before dawn and then come back after dark. And we'd go to their house and playing video games or whatever. You'd never see their dad. I mean, a few of my friends were like that. Never see their dad. And the moms were not in the best shape mentally, just really skittish. And always walking on eggshells, and always afraid of never talking very loud. If we were loud, we were told to quiet down because sometimes we'd hear music from the back bedroom playing some of that music from that era out of Vietnam and stuff. And how war has, at least being in the military, has affected people mentally, more than just themselves, the people around them, family structure, just being affected by veterans, being in a military conflict, Vietnam. I don't want to get too political, but you can't really call it a war. It was a military conflict, a political conflict. A lot of crazy stuff that happened over there. A lot of people making money. CIA and ghost recon stuff going on, drugs being brought into the United States in body bags, things like that. Just some crazy stuff going on. Through that, agent, knowing friends of mine who end up getting cancer and dying because of that Agent Orange stuff that they sprayed in Vietnam, being affected by that. I know a friend of mine whose husband was fighting the government for years and years and years, trying to get some kind of compensation for that, trying to get the United States government to recognize what happened and what they did. And then finally, I forget exactly what happened, but finally getting something, some kind of compensation. But, then after her husband, goes and dies, it's just like brushed under the rug, and just crazy stuff. I hate, sharing stuff like that, but it's just sometimes, you just wonder why and how people that are in power can do things and not care about the collateral damage it can cause other people, especially soldiers that are under them. They just tell them to do something and they do it. And there's consequences. And I didn't think, going live this morning it would end up being this way, but that's just what happened. And that's been on my mind of late. Every Veterans Day, it's always on my mind. And I wonder if I was ever went into the military, if what I could have been caught up in, maybe that was not God's plan for me to be in the military, because I might not be alive right now. Who knows? Who knows? Because I could have been caught up in the Iraqi conflict, could have been in Afghanistan or something like that. So who knows? Who knows? But war is hell. And that's all I really got to say about that, I think. But I do presently know some veterans. I know people that are working for the Veterans Administration, trying to do the best they can do, trying to do all they can do, because a lot of time our vets are not really treated very well. If you ever have time to watch the Sean Ryan show, look up some of his episodes. And Sean Ryan is one of those. He's a vet, Special Forces, I believe. Did a lot and has seen a lot. Has his own podcast that he built from the ground up. I'm a Christian, and built a new studio recently, earlier this year. Laid the foundation in pretty much every corner of that foundation. They put Bibles in the cement. They wrote scripture verses on pretty much all the main supports in that building. And he tells stories, has people on his show that tell stories of what, happened to them, in these wars, in these conflicts. And what this government has put them through. And things that they've seen and experienced, like that whole getting out of Afghanistan a few years ago, that whole experience of trying to flee when the terrorists were like surrounding the airport and trying to get out of there. There's a really, really good story on I Am Second by a guy named Robichaud. I forget his his first name, but Robichaud, this guy Robichaud. In fact, I'll share that on Facebook later today. I can't do it from this laptop. I'll probably have to do it from my phone. The internet that I have here, there's some restrictions in just stuff on YouTube. And so looking up that stuff and sharing it here, you can't because it's restricted, I guess, because of the content or whatever. But Robichaud, being a Christian, the I Am Second team is phenomenal. They have so many wonderful testimonies of people coming to know Jesus. And Robichaud is one of them. And he was in the military. If you've seen American Sniper, I think that is, and it tells a really good story of, what it's like being in the military and doing so many tours and being just keep on going back. You don't care about anything else but the torture, the hell it puts you through. And this guy Robichaud was special forces, and then his family life was hell. He went into become a UFC fighter, was a champion, but PTSD and all of that just was wreaking havoc on his life. He ended up being homeless, I think, moved out of the house and got reconciled to his wife. But right around that time of that conflict in Afghanistan, of the U.S. military pulling out, there are people being caught up and left behind. And so what he did, him and his buddies got together, and they didn't have support of the U.S. government. They had to do this on the side and through contractors and everything else. And they got a group of soldiers together, former soldiers, hardcore soldiers. I mean, these dudes are bad. These dudes are just guys you wouldn't want to cross. I mean, if you've seen any military movies, I mean, these dudes are bad. They're bad dudes. And they got together and found people with planes and an airport and went in and rescued thousands of American citizens and military out of that airport. And then there was that explosion. There was a suicide attack on the Abbey Gate that killed, I think it was 13, 14 U.S. soldiers. And so Robichaud, seeing this happen from a distance, but he did see this happen, and was able to get that one plane out, and then ended up going back after that airport had been overrun. They went back and got more people out. There was somebody that he worked with was an interpreter in some other missions in Afghanistan. And he ended up getting a phone call in the middle of the night, I think, and said, "Hey, I need help. They're hunting me down. These terrorists are hunting me down, and I need help." And so they sent another team in, and they went in, and just a top secret mission that wasn't even supported by the U.S. government. They went in and got this guy out. And you see pictures of this person. They have his face blacked out. He's living here in the United States, but they won't tell you his name. Because he's in fear of his life, because they wanted to kill him for helping out Americans. And so those stories are pretty crazy, but it's just amazing the miracles that did happen with the soldiers that did go in there and rescue people from Afghanistan. And there's still rescue missions going on. There's several former military that are doing things that are just and there's that story. I can't remember what it is, but the guy that went and was rescuing children from human trafficking, the guy that played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ, that story is pretty amazing too. Going in and rescuing children so many different times, and hundreds of kids from human trafficking. I, 'Cause this took a turn. And then you've got Tim Tebow, who's also on the front lines as far as rescuing children from predators. He was on the Sean Ryan show, and if you've ever seen that episode, it's a little hard to swallow. It's a little hard to swallow because it's, but the work that he's doing, without a lot of support from our government, is, don't get me wrong, I love this country. I love this country. This country's awesome. I love our government. I'm not going to get too political at all, but there's just things that have been going on for a long, long time, and a lot of evil in this world, and there's a few people trying to do the right thing. And as you know, there's always going to be evil, but there is a light, and that is Jesus. And but evil is really gonna, it's always going to be there. But there are the few brave people out there, well, more than a few, but that are trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. And they're on the front lines. And it's pretty amazing what's being done. But I will share some of those videos after I get done here. Yes, amen. God is above us all. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's awesome. That is true. God is above all. He's above all authority, and above all kings. Yeah, that song is starting to play in my head right now. So, but yeah, above all nature and every created thing. Yeah. Yeah. That song is pretty amazing. Yeah, God is amazing. And but happy Veterans Day to any vets that are out there that will see this, that might see this. So I'm going to turn this into some shorts on YouTube. And so I've got the day off, and I could have just laid around and did nothing all day. But yesterday I just got the idea. You know what? I didn't do any videos last week. I didn't have any guests on the podcast. And I always reminisce on the stories my grandfather told me. Actually, my grandfather didn't really tell me a lot. Is my grandmother doing most of the storytelling. My dad was on the Kitty Hawk. He didn't really talk about it much. My grandfather, being during World War II, hasn't talked about it very much. In fact, the effects of the bombing, he had shell shock. There'd be times in like right around lunchtime, probably right around 10 or 11 o'clock until about maybe 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. He'd be laid out on a couch with a pillow or whatever. And the headaches would be so bad. No medicine or anything like that ever helped him. Some of the medication that he did try in the past, throughout, raising kids and everything, never really worked that much. So it's something that they had lived with on a daily basis. Some days the headaches would be so bad they'd just be incapacitated. Now, mind you, he ended up working full time after that. He had an incredible job, I think, working for an electric company up there for a while. For many, many years, he retired from that. And so he dealt with the after effects of shell shock. And so they would be like severe migraines. Just imagine hearing and seeing those bombs from both sides, the Japanese bombing and the Americans bombing, bombing back and forth, and seeing and hearing and feeling those concussions on a daily basis during the war. And just thousands and thousands of those just loud booms. I mean, we hear fireworks, right? And that's pretty loud, but these bombs are even just the magnitude of that is 10 times the amount. And so being around my grandfather during those afternoons, you had to be super quiet. I mean, you had to be really, really quiet. I mean, he tolerated a lot, but there's sometimes if we were noisy, and you woke him up, he was just not happy because these headaches were really, really bad. And so he dealt with that for a long time. And then I think it caused health problems down the line. I didn't see him for many, many years as an adult. I didn't make trips up to Seattle in the 90s, but I believe from what my mom said that he had dementia. It caused some dementia later in life. And so, which is a pretty, my dad ended up having dementia towards his end as well, end of his life. And so, again, war is hell, and it has effects on people. And the beautiful thing is, though, in the near future on this podcast, starting around the first of the year, maybe even before that, but coming up soon, I am going to have some guests on this podcast that we are going to start addressing mental health. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to have some roundtable discussions. I reached out to my friend Rose, who is on staff here at the Rescue Mission. She is an amazing, amazing woman, very highly educated, and she put into place mental health classes. And what they have is they've had a therapist that was here. Her last day was Monday. Yesterday was Monday. Her last day was yesterday. She did an internship here at the Rescue Mission while Rose was out on maternity leave. She is coming back. And then we have another therapist that's here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then we have another therapist that just started recently. He is here, I think, 4 days a week, I believe. And he's going to take over the mental health and trauma classes starting in December or January, I believe. And so it's pretty amazing and mental health classes that we have are one of my favorite subjects. One of my favorite subjects. It's very me having some mental health issues growing up, ADHD, OCD, trauma, not really severe trauma, but some trauma growing up. And so mentally unstable for many, many, many years. And I'm really, really looking forward to that. So stay tuned on that. I can't wait to get those episodes rolling. I got to be patient though, because this is the holiday season, so we're going to be quite busy. And so I'm going to see if I can have some guests on that will join me right here during the time off, giving away turkeys and just setting up for the holidays. And so you might see me running around with my phone and a little tiny microphone and interviewing people during those times. So I'm going to be staying pretty busy. I don't know what I have planned for later this week, but I'm going to work on trying to get some guests on in some upcoming episodes later this week. I also have some good friends, my buddy Santino, who's getting back from the Philippines. I'm going to have him and Ben and Pastor Rick. They took a missions trip to the Philippines. I'm going to have them on very soon, within the next week or so. And then after that, I have got another friend who's where is he? He is in India right now, my friend Kyle. He's an evangelist, and he has an organization called Time to Revive. And what this organization does, he started from the ground up like 14, 15 years ago, where he trains people. He goes out and shares the gospel, and trains people to go out and share the gospel and discipleship. And that's what he does nonstop. And that's his life. And he is one of my favorite people on the planet. Someone who poured himself into me, came to the city of Richmond 12 years ago. In fact, I got to do this. I think it is next week, I believe. I'm going to have to make a trip to North Richmond because this month is the 12-year anniversary of the Revive Richmond event that we had here in North Richmond. There was a big tent in a park. It was for 6 days. There were people from 7 or 8 different states that came out, stayed in homes of other laborers, other people in this area, stayed in their homes. And for 6 days, they went out and shared the gospel with people in this city. And for 6 days. So this is the 12th anniversary, 12-year anniversary of that event. And I believe it happened, I think it was like the 13th through the 18th or the 17th or something like that. I got to look back and find out what the official anniversary, but I plan on going out to North Richmond to that park. Go back and just go see if there's any people that are still there. I am going to share those stories with you guys too. I looked at some of those videos earlier towards the end of last week. Those videos are on YouTube. Some of them are a little hard to find from the Engage week, but anyways, so how long have I been on? I have been on for 47 minutes already. That is crazy. 47 minutes already. Time flies. Can't believe I rambled on for that much. So, a lot of exciting things coming up on this channel, on the Mic'd Up podcast. And I really look forward to sharing some stories with you. And so stay tuned. And I will be seeing you very, very soon. Thank you for watching. And I can't wait to see you very soon. And God bless you all. And until next time, this is Mic'd Up. If I can find the arrow, there we go. End stream. Bam. Bam.